shortly after our inception, which was back in 2004. We became the largest by default. The two larger, well-established centers closed on either side of us back in 2006. And so when we had very humble beginnings of just servicing the Venice, Nokomis, Northport area, we ended up covering all of West Charlotte County and all of Sarasota County. This is what everyone's got the 3 R's of education. In my field, I think it should be 5. And it kind of shows the path. In our case, we get calls from all over the Tri-County area. And of course, we refer the closest help where it's pertinent, but a lot of times that's us. And our goal is to get them help as soon as possible. And in the case of young ones, let's say a baby fell out of a tree. That's my favorite thing, to put it back in the tree with its mom. Job's done. So they could just be as simple as the first 2 steps. Or just coaching them over the phone and leaving them with mom rather than orphaning, let's say, a deer fawn. And, a lot of people don't know much about deer, so they find one in their backyard and they think they're orphaned. Well, mom's probably not going to come back for 12 hours or so, and it was just told to sit put. So we spent a lot of time doing the rescue and the re-nest and education over the phone. But rehabilitation is where most of our detailed work is. That's where all the real labor is, all the cage cleaning, all the wound care, all the husbandry, all that stuff is the time-consuming part. Return and release, a lot of people just look at that as one thing, but to me, their territories and their home range and home court advantage are so important to what we do. We usually strive to get the animals back where they came from. Now, there are obvious exceptions where land was clear-cut and not acceptable for them. Maybe the habitat can't sustain the population or something. We have to take all these things into consideration. But that's the 5 R's of rehabilitation. That almost became our logo once, and it almost got in a couple newsletters. No one liked it, so you guys are my poor souls that had to bear with my little E here for education. Wildlife rescue, our philosophy is you often can't help them if you can't catch them. Followed by try to do no harm. If they don't need caught, we stop pursuit. If something's got a broken leg and it's hanging, our goal is to catch it as soon as humanly possible. Because if we can catch it when it's fresh, which is very difficult, especially in a flighted bird, then we can give it a good shot at a return to the wild healthily. If we get a necrotic leg that's half hanging on, I hate when people say we let nature take its course, because even though I agree with that in the middle of a state forest, it doesn't really exist. It's all human causes. Okay, I can tell you almost everything I do is caused by people. And that's 4,000 animals a year. So our volunteer rescue team, we cover and rescue range. We're all volunteer. I have about 150 volunteers covering all of Sarasota and West Charlotte. We have a few volunteers out toward Mayaca City. We network with our colleagues with Peace River Wildlife, Save Our Seabirds, Wildlife Inc. and Manatee. We also work with Fish and Wildlife, Florida Fish and Wildlife, State U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Coastal Wildlife Club, which does the sea turtles along with Boat Marine. We also work with, I said Jared, he's a one-man agency for us, but he's a big part of our service. And, the nice thing is he brings them straight to us. He's not, all the other agencies like Charlotte County Animal Services isn't allowed to leave county lines. So Jared actually has the flexibility to leave Northport realm to come to the Wildlife Center of Venice because Northport doesn't have a wildlife center. So that is kind of one of those special things. Sarasota County also can't leave county lines. So to get help, on the other side in Charlotte County, I have to send a volunteer to Inglewood or Port Charlotte or something to meet an officer to bring it in. Sometimes the vet clinics or the Humane Society will help us. There's a few drop spots. Rescue. This is what built our organization. Other than the fall of the 2 bigger centers, what we ripped off from them was what worked. What made us the biggest is rescue, rescue, rescue. Pelican Man's Bird Sanctuary, where I used to work, did 5,000 animals a year, so they were the biggest prior to us. And Inglewood had Amber Lake Wildlife Refuge, which was in kind of just south of South Venice in Inglewood. And those were the 2 centers that gave us our training and our experience largely. And we've kind of copied and tried to keep traditions going from those two prior centers. That's me playing in the osprey nest on a piling in the intercoastal. You can't see the boat. Rescue trucks, they're all volunteer vehicles. Our whole fleet is volunteers dedicating their time, their services, a lot of times their own equipment. We supply what we can, and they're just dedication. So we send rescuers every day to Boca Grande, North Sarasota, Mayaca City less often, but sometimes 2 times a day, but less often in general, smaller population. That's me doing my favorite thing in the world, and that's re-nesting a bald eagle chick. That's
awesome.
Climbing the trees is my favorite thing. I never grew up. It's getting harder, I can tell you.
Growing up is overrated.
What's that?
Growing up is overrated.
It is. I'm done with it already.
It sucks.
Join the WC Group Rescue Team. I talked to Edie, and this is something that maybe in the future we could have a rescue training class for this group. If you guys had any interest and overlap, and that's where the fun stuff is a lot of the time, a lot of the adventure. And we do all variety. One thing I like to mention, this page brings up a couple things. You see the otters and the bobcat, those are rabies vector species. Another reason we network so closely with animal services is these kind of species, our staff requires to have rabies vector prevention shots. Now, that's because if something happens where someone gets bit, all the government agencies that I know of are people's health first. And I agree with that to a point, but we are the group that goes out and puts the animals first by definition. So to do that properly and to keep the animals safe, I have to keep the people safe, or they'll destroy the animals to protect my volunteers. So we got to be smart about right equipment, the preventative shots in the rabies vector species cases. Marine called me not too long ago and asked if I ever get crippled otters, because they're talking about doing an otter display, and I warned them. I was like, well, as far as I know, whales and dolphins don't get it. You should really look into your rabies vector shots for every staff member that's going to work with that animal. Otherwise, it could get destroyed. There are, plus keep in mind your rabies shots that are made for dogs and cats don't count legally for wildlife. I give those shots to our wildlife in certain cases, but legally they don't count. So if one of those animals, inoculated or not, bites somebody, they don't count. So I take that very seriously. The cat in the news lately really brings it home. That cat probably was not rabid. And I don't want to see it destroyed. I'd like to see the guy go get the shots and stop looking for the cat. But at the same time, I do think feral cats should not be feral. They should be indoors. For wildlife's sake, they should be indoors. I don't think they should be persecuted because they think they're rabid. I think they should be in people's supervision. If I don't want to see my bobcats and otters destroyed because they're going to the cat food in a feral cat trap. That happens all the time. I've been upset so many times. It's not the people that love the cat's fault. It's not the people that love the wildlife's fault. It's the people that let the cats out's fault.
Well, and people don't realize the average lifespan for a outdoor cat is 4 years.
Yeah, and it's not just, some people worry about predation. I get calls, people want coyotes removed. I think the coyote should be the best educational tool for the future of our feral cat situation. I think if they encouraged everyone to keep their cats indoors, then that would be a great educational tool. I tell you what, whether you like the coyote or not, they're here to stay. They conquered the whole eastern seaboard, and they tried to stop them the whole expansion. They failed. So they're here to stay. I think they should be naturalized in and keep the cats indoors where they can be kept away from disease and cars and predators and all that other stuff. So that shows a little scrub data. We don't get a lot of those anymore. Rescue mantra. The best rescuer is the one that shows up and gives it their best, time and time again. Our dedicated crew is why we get so many animals, because like Linda, okay, I call her all the time in Northport. She's one of your main Northport rescuers. I call her from the sheriff's department, from the fire department, from citizens' backyards where they find a baby bunny in a puddle, they find a hawk under a car with a broken wing. I'm calling citizens like you to get your little handheld fishing net and your gloves and your little dog kennel, cat kennel, and go do what we can do. And then when they need backup, if they need a tree climber on one of them, if you need a fireman's ladder, we'll call them. If we need a FPL to shut off a power line, we'll call them. They usually don't do anything. Then we call Fish and Wildlife. They sometimes make it move. If not, we call the press. We've learned. All right, we've learned. I've had some issues over the years. I'm learning when you can't get anywhere with the government, you try your best with the press. Okay. At the WCB, we just don't quit. If I get a sandhill crane with a broken leg, they can fly. So, sometimes sandhills, some of them are very tame in neighborhoods, so some of them we get pretty quickly. And that's a good and bad thing. The bad thing is they're fed, which gets them in trouble in the first place. The good thing is we can get them promptly and give them medical treatment. So it's a give-take for sure. Prevention is better, but once you've already got them injured, you want to help them as fast as you can. I'll lure them into people's garages and lanais. I will not promise you they won't damage things, and I won't cover the liability. However, if it saves their life, I think you should consider doing it. Catching it promptly, especially with a compound fracture, is hugely important. After it's been flopping in the wind for a week or something, or sometimes hours, there's not much medically we can do. Sometimes euthanasia is all we have left. Most of these big-legged or big birds, especially sandhill cranes, you might have seen at zoos and nature centers all across the country where they put prosthetics and pipes on their legs. Those always fail. The centers that tell you they don't, they're putting in ringers. Okay. And that was actually banned nationwide a decade ago, and I'm fighting to keep it banned. To professionally service such a large area truly takes a lot of dedicated volunteers. I said I had about 150 volunteers. Most of them participate in rescue. Some of them are seasonal. Some of them aren't as physically fit or as available all the time. But to cover one person like Jared, I was thinking, to get enough 4-hour volunteer shifts to cover a full-time personnel. That's where you really, someone like Jared really puts it in the home, where one person full-time staff makes a lot of difference. And I puts it in perspective for us, because we have a staff of 4 right now. I could use a staff of 10 or 20, but we make up the difference with those wonderful, awesome volunteers. Let's see, re-nesting and family reunions. Again, this is the most fulfilling part of our job we get. I mean, I don't save as many electrocutions and hit by cars and all that stuff as I like. But if a baby falls out of a tree and there's a nest I can see intact and mom's standing over it, that's an easy win-win job. I mean, I'll take the hit in the head and call it a reward to not have to get up every hour or every 4 hours or every 8 hours.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Babies and juvenile birds. We do about 2,000 birds a year usually, and that's a lot of variety in our area. We're in kind of a birding hotspot over our whole Tri-County area. The baby bird or baby mammals, we get the big 4, raccoons, squirrels, rabbits, and possums. We get hundreds of these things. I love them. I love every one of them. And we'll try with every one. Some people are like, why would you raise that? Why don't you just feed it to the eagle? Or why don't, the reason people bring us so many amazing animals is because they trust us. We're going to take care of the rabbit. We're going to take care of the baby mouse. We're not going to take priorities. But however, because we're there day and night taking care of some of the things that a lot of people don't think as much about, we also get the otters and the bobcats and the eagles and we get swallowtail kites, and we get some amazing iconic species.
Tortoises.
But tortoises, gopher tortoises. We get lots of gopher tortoises. I'm really proud of you guys' efforts in this club for gopher tortoises. My opinion is the current Fish and Wildlife policy on them has already sold their future. It needs to be changed so where land is protected in certain hot spots, because everyone knows what gopher tortoises need. They need a certain type of high, dry land, which all the developers want. And that's where their future is imperiled. They're not burying them alive anymore. There are legal protections, but they're not strong enough to actually protect their habitat. They're taking a lot of them and shipping them to areas set aside by developers with the state of Florida for relocation zones. But what people don't realize is tortoises are moved from place to place all the time, every day, by citizens in their cars. They mean well. They take it from this place and take it to that place. They look happy over here. And then they take it from that place the next week and move it. So what bothers me about that is you look up the new gopher tortoise rules. If you don't know where it came from, they're looking at institutionalizing them or euthanizing them. Now, they should get to stay in their territories, and that should be our utmost fight to keep them there. But nobody truly knows where most of them came from. I mean, if you document them this week, you don't know when they were moved there. Was it yesterday or last year?
They're called waves.
Yes.
And I was told by Fish and Wildlife that they have now one wave site left in the state of Florida, and they're desperate for more of them. And a wave site, these like foster children tortoises, and so they don't get relocated with a bunch of tortoises. So the minimum would be 5 acres, and so Fish and Wildlife is dying to have somebody come up with 5 acres so that these wave tortoises have somewhere to go.
Well, the hard part is, again, though, the land that they need could be set aside on the front end instead of, moving them to new place, and they should be left where they're at, is my opinion.
Right, and it just takes money to
Yes, but wave gopher tortoise, you are allowed to relocate younger ones, like she was saying, the wave tortoises. But the adults, let's say I get an adult hit by a car, but they didn't fill out an address where it came from. I'm either supposed to institutionalize it or euthanize it. I'm not okay with that. Obviously I'll fudge some paperwork to save it. So, and they can come find me. So I'm not hiding very much.
You're the man, because that's what I would do.
I'm sorry?
I said, you're the man, because that's what I would do. Oh yeah, it was found over here.
And that's what I say it very openly, because most of my colleagues and all the different agencies agree. Yes?
I read a book by a husband and wife team called Ashton.
Ray, yeah, he passed away.
Okay.
He was one of the leading experts.
And they describe in there a method of marking the gopher tortoises. And it's basically drilling a hole in the carapace on the outside to have a method of, for thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones. How do you feel about that?
I don't
really, because on the one hand, drilling, it is bloody. They say they will bleed, and if you don't get all the way through.
I think they'll feel it, and I don't like the idea.
I don't like the idea, but on the other hand, if we mark the tortoise and we identify it to FWC or the city of Northport, now that identified tortoise, we know where it came from. And in the case of where it's injured and you get it, you can look at that number, it's identifiable, and it can go back to the place.
And I agree with that. I think there's a lot of topics that are difficult, because if you ID them all and assign them all a place today, you don't know how many were fresh there or long-term watched there. Now with people monitoring certain areas, you can get very detailed information. But a lot of these areas, if it's just submitted by citizen scientists or people that like the gopher tortoise next door, I think some way to, I don't think a chip I think that would be better than a chip or something in those guys. I've marked them myself with markers. It doesn't last that long.
No.
They're, I think my biggest concern is, depending on which way state policy changes, if they're all identified, that could be scary. However,
Big tortoise brother?
yeah. However, I do think that you need to use these kind of identification tools and protect ranges and habitat. I'm more interested in preserving the 100 acres where there's 50 tortoises in than saving one tortoise at a time. That's just, now what I do is save them one at a time as they're presented to me, hit by cars, chewed by dogs, those kind of things. So, but when I'm thinking, I just don't like the whole relocation program. I think it's necessary. I think there will always be something involved in that way, but I really think that the gopher tortoise I think it should be like the scrub jay used to be. I think you go there and you find a scrub jay or an indigo snake or a gopher tortoise, stop the